Thank you. Right, last application is Little Plumstead Heath Farm on Norwich Road. And we have Martin again. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So we've got application site here in the corner of this agricultural field, the Heath Farm. Again, just showing you the aerial view here, so obviously surrounded by sort of agricultural fields. So there was an approval, under prior approval, for an agricultural building. So under application 2023/3833. This is the elevations and the floor plan of that which was approved. So as you would imagine an agricultural building to look, large roller doors. The building was built with additional doors and windows, as you can see in these elevations, and a mezzanine level, which these first floor windows serve. So it's been built different to as it was approved under the agricultural prior approval. So that's just the floor plan of what has been built. You can see here, this is an image from Google Maps. You can see here that it was constructed with these additional openings in the building when it was constructed. So it's been built different to how we'd approved it, which gives an indication that there was always a commercial intention in mind rather than an agricultural use. So now we've just got some images to show you, obviously, the building as it is. In assessing this application, in terms of the principle of development, it's outside of any development boundary, so located in a countryside location. We have to assess it as a new commercial building rather than a change of use, because it's not been built as approved as an agricultural building and it's not been used for any agricultural purpose. So we have assessed it as a new commercial building in the countryside, which in terms of planning policy we don't consider to be acceptable. So you can see here, obviously it is a very large building. It stands out quite significantly as you're going down Norwich Road there. An agricultural building obviously has to be in that rural location to serve the purpose that it's intended for, which is why it was approved under the prior approval. It was permitted development, so obviously we are much more limited in terms of the considerations we can give a prior approval application. So that's why it was considered acceptable for that agricultural use. And just further images here. Obviously with a commercial use you are going to have additional features externally as well, additional car parking, there might be additional storage, fencing, those sorts of things that you would normally expect to see with a commercial site that you wouldn't expect to have with an agricultural building. So from that aspect it's having more of an impact in terms of the appearance there. In terms of the connectivity of the site, we don't consider that it's acceptable. There's no public transport. It's obviously a very fast road, it's 60 miles an hour down there, so you're unlikely to have people biking or walking to the site, so you are going to be reliant on motor vehicles to get there. So we don't consider it to be acceptable in that sense. The main thing is in terms of obviously the visual impact on the landscape. To have a commercial building in this position, you know, in an agricultural field surrounded by agricultural land, we consider has significant harm to the character and appearance of the area. You can see obviously the scale of it there. So it is for those reasons, the impact on the character and appearance of the area, being outside of the development boundary, poor connectivity, that we consider it's not acceptable as a new commercial building, and we recommend refusal.
Sorry, Chairman, can I
Thank you,
just
Martin.
clarify just in terms of page 49 of your report, just as a kind of, I guess, a clarification and a slight error. So we've somewhat repeated the refusal reason for point 1. So that should read, start from the proposed buildings and from second paragraph and exclude the first paragraph entirely. It's just a replication in terms of the editing of the document.
Any clarification from the officer? Joe?
Yeah, I just want to know more about this application that's before us. Obviously, it was built under permitted development as an agricultural building, but as you say, there are windows and a mezzanine have been put in, which would not be considered within permitted development. So, if we refuse this application today, what will happen to that building? Will it have to be taken down? I just want to know what will happen. Obviously, we approved the application at the back end of 2024 for the new access to go in for this agricultural, what we thought was an agricultural building. It does look quite commercial to me, but what will happen? Will the mezzanine have to be taken out, and will the windows have to be blocked up? I mean, will the building need to be taken down even? Thank you.
We are still seeking some clarification on that, which would need to get some legal advice in terms of the necessary enforcement action. So one, it's whether or not we can require it to be taken back to what was granted as permitted development, i.e. removal of the windows, removal of the mezzanine, in terms of and how its use. But we would also need to question whether or not the applicant can still engage that consent because of how it's been constructed, and therefore whether that consent is lost, and therefore whether we would require the wholesale removal of the building. And unfortunately, I don't have the answer for you today, but obviously on the basis of a refusal, we'd be seeking to take necessary enforcement action. We can certainly update members of what that looks like when we get that clarification around what that necessary enforcement action looks like.
If there are no further comments, I'm going to ask David Murrell, the applicant. Would you like to come forward, please, Mr. Murrell? Mr. Barrell, you need to press the right-hand button, and you have 5 minutes from when you start speaking.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I actually blame this planning authority for my being here today because you may recall in October 24 you granted us consent for a pig unit and a house on the adjoining land to the north, and this was always planned for my son to come and live in the new house, manage the pig unit and use this building for his agricultural machinery business. Now that application took 14 months to get to committee. Totally unacceptable. That put the business in a serious situation. In those intervening months, after we've bought this building and erected it, and still waiting for the planning consent for the pig unit and the house, first, I don't blame him because we can't all abide by the time limits that this planning authority works to. It's just beyond comprehension how not my applications, but any applications have taken years to come to fruition or come to this committee. So here we are with the building. Office, and the officer has told me that an agricultural building doesn't need a toilet or an office. So obviously us farmer types have to wait till we get home to use the loo at home. Okay, I've made a mistake and should have applied for the windows and the mezzanine floor and the toilet. I've made that mistake. But I'm intrigued by what Tracy says, because if you refuse this application today, I'm sceptical that we will have to demolish that building, because we could block off the windows and do away with the mezzanine floor, so then our prior approval consent in early 24 would presumably still be valid. That building has cost me 400 grand and it's not viable. We don't have an agricultural use for it. There's no shots of the adjoining farmyard that is actually a care home and a dementia care facility. But that building is much the same as the adjoining building in the farmyard of Heath Farm. It's unfortunate that Martin chose not to take any photographs of that. And of course, planning policy, if you read through one paragraph, you know, it shouldn't be there. Another paragraph, it depends which direction you come from. I mean, 5.4 of the NPPF states that planning policies and decisions should enable sustainable growth and expansion of all types of business in rural areas, both through conversion of existing buildings and well-designed new buildings, the development and diversification of agriculture and other land-based businesses. Now, I think government policy is that planning authorities have to allow farmers to diversify. If I could turn the clock back, I would make this building disappear and have my 400 grand back in my pocket and have a much better relationship with my son that this planning authority has quite honestly ruined. It was a 14-month delay getting permission for the adjoining pig unit. So I'll have to throw myself at your mercy. And in the meantime, last week, almost forgot, Anglian Plant, plant hire business in the middle of Racky's airfield, are going to be surrounded by 4,000 houses that you guys have approved. They have got to move their business. And I understand officers keep asking Mr. Patterson at Anglian Plant if he's found anywhere else to go. Now, he rode past this site and suddenly thought, oh, that looks good. So there's a letter that I actually sent to you all from Anglian Plant, pointing out that he would be a very keen tenant or buyer of this site, and that would overcome obviously another problem with him moving out of his existing business that is going to be surrounded by 4,000 houses. So to my mind, it's a no-brainer. The building is there. Obviously we would fight like hell to keep it there in one way or another, even by altering it and blanking off windows.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. You had your 5 minutes. Thank you.
Sorry, okay, thank you very much.
Any comments from the committee for the speaker? Peter.
Morning, Mr. Morrow. I just, you answered it really in your last summary, really. You obviously believe you've now got a tenant to move in there. How realistic do you think that's going to be, and what sort of timescale are you looking at to get him in there?
Well, a tenant or a buyer, I mean, I can't make decisions on behalf of Mr. Patterson, who owns Anglian Plant, but he has got to move. He's going to be surrounded by 4,000 houses, and the road network is going to be such that he's going to have to move with his Arctics and with plant and diggers on round the housing estate, because Muck Lane across Racky's airfield is going to disappear. So it's got to be totally impossible for him to operate his business within the housing estate.
Mr. Murrell, thank you for your argument. Has this ever been used in an agricultural building? Because
it's not actually finished yet.
It's not finished. Okay, so it has not been occupied by an agricultural business whatsoever. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. You can return to your seat, please. Sorry, you can return to your seat, Mr. Murray.
Sorry, can you say again?
You can return to your seat.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. It's a tough one, because I can understand where the planning officers are coming from, because that's been built different to what the planning application was. it was not given permission as a commercial building, it was given permission as an agricultural building. And it seems to be built right from the start as a commercial building. Then again, I can see the possibility of employment in the area, if it can be used. It does stand out in a country setting, which is unfortunate. I would like your opinions, please. Joe.
Thank you very much, Chair. It was interesting to hear what Mr Murrell said and also what Officer Lincoln said earlier. I think this application puts the Planning Committee in an invidious situation. This has not been occupied as an agricultural building. It was built under permitted development, hasn't been occupied at all. And yet I would hate to see this building taken down because it's just a waste of resource, I think. So I would like to defer this just to see what Officer Lincoln says, whether this will have to be taken down or not, or whether another way can be found. I'd just be interested in to know what Officer Lincoln has to say on the matter.
You can just give me 2 seconds.
I think if we refuse it, it's going to go to appeal probably, and it'll be up to the planning inspector to make that decision, which could take a long time. Peter.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, there would, to my mind, there'd be no need for the gentleman to take it down because it would just stand as it is, really, on its current usage. My concern would be that if it was used for, I mean, who knows what it's going to be used for, but an increase in traffic on what is already a fast road, if we were to have it as a distribution centre, I can see heavy lorries bombing along there. But again, it might be for another usage. But I think I go with what Councillor Coppleston says and perhaps go for a deferment on this. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. So in terms of a deferral, and I guess, you know, your questions are around the potential enforcement activity. So I think what I'm hearing from you is you're concerned enough to refuse the application, but your questions around deferral are around the enforcement. We can defer and seek agreement with members as to what proportionate enforcement is necessary once you've determined the application. So that we're not fixed to that. So I guess what my advice is in terms of the legality of the the building, we need to test that out and understand that. But then we can still apply our discretion and navigate what that appropriate proportionate enforcement looks like. So I guess you've got two choices. You could defer that to seek further understanding of the enforcement and we bring that back, or you could determine to refuse that subject to appropriate enforcement, which we could come back and clarify at a further meeting, or do that via the chair for you in terms of understanding what that proportionate enforcement would look like.
May I ask a supplementary question to Officer Lincoln, please? Mr Murrell said his intention for this building when it was being built was for his son to carry out an agricultural machinery business. I didn't realise that came under agricultural permitted development and that would be an industrial use. Could you just clarify that point for me, please? Thank you.
Absolutely. So an agricultural machinery storage business would be a separate use. You can store agricultural machinery in a building if it's associated with the use of the land that it's sited on. So that wider land holding, if that machinery is for the purpose of farming that holding, then that's acceptable. If it's just a general agricultural storage business, that is not a farming activity.
Sorry, Chair. I thought I heard Mr Murrell say it was to sell agricultural machinery.
And I think the point is, in terms of the permitted, the consent that was granted was obviously for agricultural purposes, which clearly the applicant would be aware that is only agricultural use in terms of related to the use of the land. Clearly what was started to be constructed was not that agricultural building. So I think that's kind of the key important thing to take away. Yeah.
It's a hard one. I think there's a warning here for a lot of people not to build things which are not within the planning regulations. And this is going to cause the sort of situation we've got here today. Yeah. I would like your advice, Tracy, on how to go further with this.
I guess, do we have a proposal in terms of, I mean, Councillor Coppleton, around either a deferral around that issue or a delegated authority to refuse subject to clarification around the enforcement? Say the enforcement activity is at the discretion of the local authority in consultation, so we can do that in consultation with the local member and the chair, so we can agree what that proportionate approach looks like following some legal advice.
Anna, you got a proposal?
Yeah, I'm slightly puzzled by this really, because it seems to me that this was meant to be an agricultural building, presumably for storage of machinery, you know, those sorts of purposes. This building is built for potentially for commercial and industrial purposes. Therefore, the planning policy requirements are totally different. Had an application for a commercial building of this size and scale come forward in this location, I would think it would not be recommended by the officers for approval. So I'm slightly unsure as to why the enforcement, whatever enforcement happens, would have any bearing on my decision over whether to approve the application or not. So I can't actually see a point for me in deferring it. I guess I would go with the officer's recommendation just to refuse it here and now, because it doesn't meet planning policy requirements. So I think, yeah, okay, I'm proposing that we go with the officer's recommendation to refuse this planning application as it stands.
You have a seconder.
And just to clarify that, so the enforcement still needs to be considered, and that is in line with our enforcement policy, which requires that enforcement to take appropriate action, to be commensurate, so we will apply your enforcement policy to that decision.
Can I just clear one point? Would this building continue to stand as it is if we don't go with that recommendation? Because it seems a tragic waste of the gentleman's 400 grand and the fact it's been given the go ahead. Well, thank you.
It's a warning to apply the planning regulations as they are. If you wanted to apply for a commercial building, apply for a commercial building. You've applied for a agricultural building, and that's not what has been built. So abide to the rules, yeah? Okay, we're going to go for Eleanor's proposal, and Bibbin seconded. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Refusal.
7, Chair.
Those against? 2 against. Thank you. Right, we'll go to planning appeals. I'm going to hand over to Tracy for appeals, please.
Be a quick one, there's nothing really to note. So we've got a delegated decision which was refused, which has been dismissed on appeal, which was for holiday use. So there's nothing specific to pick up on that. That was retrospective. So again, we'll be looking at your enforcement policies around appropriate action on that. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, everybody. I close the meeting at 11:38.